Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back to Policy and Rates here on Depictions Media Radio. I am your host, Michael Clogs. We have a report from the German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht, as she announces today that the German government has confirmed reports that it will approve delivery of anti-aircraft tanks to Ukraine. The German defense minister held a press conference in Germany to confirm this today, and apparently Germany is doing whatever they can to support Ukraine and their efforts to ward off the attacks from Russia. Along with that, we're going to hear from the United Nations about other issues, but we have a release from the Secretary General as he had a meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister. And the Secretary says as Secretary General of the UN, I came to Moscow as a messenger of peace. My objective is, and my agenda is strictly linked to save lives and reduce suffering. I had a frank discussion with the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and it's clear that there are two different positions on what is happening in Ukraine. According to the Russian Federation, what is taking place is a special military operation with the objectives that were announced. According to the UN, in the line with the resolutions passed by this General Assembly, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is in violation of its territorial integrity and against the Charter of the United Nations. But it is my deep conviction that the sooner we end the war, the better. The better people, the people of Ukraine, for the people of the Russian Federation, and for those far beyond. The United Nations has repeatedly called for ceasefires to protect civilians and to facilitate political dialogue to reach a solution. So far, that has not been possible. Today, across the Donbass, the violent battle is underway with tremendous death and destruction. Many civilians are being killed, and hundreds of thousands of people are in life-threatening conditions, trapped under by the conflict. I am concerned about the repeated reports of the violations of international humanitarian and human rights law and possible war crimes. They are required independent investigations for effective accountability. We urgently need humanitarian corridors that are safe and effective, and that they are respected by all, to evacuate civilians and deliver much needed assistance. to that end, I have a purpose to establish the establishment of a humanitarian contact group bringing together the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United Nations to look for opportunities for opening of safe corridors with local cessations of hostilities and to guarantee that they are actually effective. Simultaneously, we recognize that we face a crisis within a crisis in Mariupol. Thousands of civilians are in dire need of life-saving humanitarian assistance. The UN is fully ready to mobilize its human and logistic resources to help save lives in Mariupol. My proposal is for a coordinated work of the United Nations, the international community of the Red Cross, and the Ukraine and Russian Federation forces to enable safe evacuation of civilians who want to leave both sides, both inside the Aratrov's plant in the city and in direction they choose, and to deliver humanitarian aid where required. And you can read more of his statement at depictions.media. But basically, the Secretary General has met with the Russian Federation in a hopes to save lives and to end the conflict that is going on.
Important for us to start giving assistance wherever Ukraine finds it necessary. And of course, we coordinate with our partners within NATO, the European Union and beyond. And I'm also very happy that this conference today is a starting point for us to take long-term action, because we need security guarantees for Ukraine. And for that purpose, they need well-trained armed forces. That's a challenge for the future. We have to take care of that, and it's very good that this conference today gives this signal to Ukraine. We have given a lot of support regarding mortars, regarding anti-aircraft systems. We always support wherever there is a need, wherever we identify a need, and we coordinate with our partners. And this is what we will continue to do in the future. German policy is always based on not going it alone, but coordinating with our allies and our partners. And that is why, at a very early stage, we have delivered whatever was possible from the inventory of Bundeswehr. It was about anti-aircraft missiles. We always coordinated before delivering. And this is what we are going to do, whatever the Ukraine needs and whatever we have agreed together with our allies, we will deliver. And we are also going to cooperate with our friends from the United States and our Dutch partners regarding howitzer training. And this is always the task. This is our strength, to do it together. And this is what Putin felt all the time. Ukraine is not alone. It has the support of so many states. That's the important signal. Currently, we do support as regards training to use modern artillery systems. The Dutch partners are assisting in giving training regarding how to use, and we are going to talk to our allies what more we could do together. In the medium and long term, we must make sure that Ukraine has a well-equipped, well-trained army. We are going to make our contribution to that. Ever since the war began, Germany has been delivering weapons to Ukraine, and we have supported Ukraine a great deal. We have delivered things from our inventories. When this was no longer possible, we found an agreement with industry. Ukraine orders we will pay. A modernization initiative will be stepped up to 2 billion. We have also focused on multilateral exchanges so that wherever there are inventories, those goods could be delivered to Ukraine so that the Ukrainians can continue their courageous fight. And Slovenia, for instance, is one of the exchange partners, and we help them to build up their inventory. This is rapid support, and here we can say we are a reliable partner at the side of Ukraine together with our allies and partners. I said clearly today that wherever there is an identification what else the Ukraine needs, when it comes to drones, when it comes to anti-aircraft system, there we have taken decisions and we have received positive reactions and responses. We are constantly monitoring all the requirements that were given to us by Ukraine. We analyze the situation, we take decisions. This is what we did when it comes to the Gepard-type anti-aircraft tank. We do that for anti-tank mines, and we have done that ever since day one. This is the way in which we work. We first analyze, and then we take decisions together with partners and allies. There was always an alert and a danger that we might become a party to the war when delivering weapons. How about that? We must make sure that neither NATO nor we as Germany become a party to the war. This would have devastating consequences. We have to prevent a further escalation, but the number of weapons that we deliver is not the only thing that is decisive. It is decisive for us to be in close coordination with each other, and that is why we take very moderate steps and we take very responsible decisions so we can make sure we do not become a party to that war, but clearly give our support to Ukraine. We have decided it is now important to focus on anti-aircraft systems. This is what we can do with our Gepard tank, and this is precisely on the list that the Ukraine has given us. And this is what we make possible now together with our partners. Thank you very much.
Introducing Speechelo, the most natural-sounding text-to-speech software on the market. Hey, I'm Joey, and I'm one of the 30 AI voices from Speechelo. You listened to this video until now and you probably couldn't tell I'm not a real human voice. That's because I understand exactly what each phrase is saying, and I know how to put inflections in my voice, just like a real human would do. I was coded in that way that my neural linguistic engine will analyze the phrases, and I'll understand when I'm enumerating something, when I have to emphasize a word, or I need to take a deep breath. But you don't have to worry about any of these things. With Speechelo you can generate as many voiceovers as you want with only 3 clicks. Yes, you heard me right. Only 3 clicks. Click number 1. Just paste the text you want to be transformed into speech in our online text editor. Click number 2. Choose the language and voice that you want to use. We offer male, female and even kids' voices. And finally click number 3. Click on generate and in 5 seconds your voiceover is ready to be downloaded. How cool is that? And you didn't have to pay a single cent. And didn't have to wait a week to receive your voiceover. We offer voices that are perfect for training videos, voices that are perfect for presentation videos, and voices that sound like Hollywood movie trailers, and even kid voices that sound joyful and innocent. All our voices have elements that make a voice sound real, and include all the voice expressions needed to make people more engaged in your content and make it sound professional. Actually 98% of the people hearing a voiceover generated with Speechelo can't tell it's not a real human voice. This video is created with a voice from Speechelo and you are still here watching and listening to what I have to say. That proves my point. So here is the deal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our guest today will be Mami Mizuturi, the Secretary General Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction and head of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. She will be here to brief on the Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction for 2022, which was shared with you. And of course, we will also hear from Paulina Kubiak, the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly. The Secretary General met today in Moscow with Russian President Vladimir Putin and earlier with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The meeting with President Putin is, in fact, I think, just about to wrap up right now. Speaking to the press after his meeting with the Foreign Minister, the Secretary General reiterated his deep conviction that the sooner we end this war, the better, for the people of Ukraine, for the people of the Russian Federation, and those far beyond. He warned that today, across the Donbass, a violent battle is underway with tremendous death and destruction. He expressed his concern about the repeated reports of violations of international humanitarian and human rights law and possible war crimes, which require independent investigation for effective accountability. Mr. Guterres said that we urgently need humanitarian corridors that are truly safe and effective, and that are respected by all, to evacuate civilians and deliver much-needed assistance. To that end, he has proposed the establishment of a humanitarian contact group, bringing together the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United Nations to look for opportunities for the opening of safe corridors with local cessations of hostilities and to guarantee that they are actually effective. The Secretary General said that the United Nations is ready to fully mobilize its human and logistical resources to help save lives in Mariupol. He said his proposal is for a coordinated work of the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the Ukrainian and Russian Federation forces to enable the safe evacuation of those civilians who want to leave, both inside the Azovstal plant in the city, in any direction they choose, and to deliver the humanitarian aid required. Also on Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues continued to receive reports of damages to houses and other critical civilian infrastructure due to intense shelling and fighting reported over the last couple of days in southern and central regions of the country, including Odessa, Poltavska, Vinnytska, and Zaporizhzhia oblasts. The intensification of hostilities in Donetsk, Luhanska, and Kharkivska oblasts is also reportedly impacting civilians and creating further obstacles for humanitarian operations. We, along with our humanitarian partners in Ukraine, continue to call on the parties to enable their life-saving work by guaranteeing the safe passage of aid workers and supplies to areas impacted by fighting. On Pakistan, the resident and humanitarian coordinator, Julian Harness, strongly condemned today's attack in Karachi University and is deeply saddened by the resulting loss of life. He said attacks that deliberately target education, teachers, and places of learning are particularly condemnable, and sent his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims, both in Pakistan and in China. Our colleagues in the peacekeeping mission in Mali have intensified their security and protection activities in Menaka and in the surrounding areas. This has been done in response to the marked deterioration of the security situation observed there in recent weeks. They're working in close cooperation with local Malian authorities. More specifically, the mission's military and police components, in coordination with Malian forces, conduct day and night patrols in Manaka. Patrols are also conducted by UN peacekeepers in the immediate vicinity of Manaka and beyond. These patrols will be reinforced with the launch of additional operations that will significantly extend the reach of the MINUSMA force in support of the civilian population. Our colleagues note that this is in addition to the actions already in place in various locations in the so-called Three Borders area. In addition, the mission is supporting humanitarians to facilitate the delivery of much-needed assistance to the affected population. Our colleagues are also continuing their efforts to prevent and diffuse intercommunal tensions. Finally, a fact-finding investigation into human rights violations and abuses has been initiated. The abuses perpetrated against the civilian population will be documented and the related report made public. The aim is to identify the perpetrators and facilitate their prosecution. The mission reiterates its condemnation of the abuses committed against civilians, as well as the destruction of their property and livelihoods. They say the current developments in the Manaka region highlight not only the need for a stronger state presence through the acceleration of the implementation of the peace agreement, but also the need to strengthen cross-border cooperation, given the regional nature of the security challenges facing the Sahel. We have received a clarification from our peacekeeping mission in Western Sahara, MINURSO, regarding a number of reports in Moroccan media outlets suggesting that Special Representative Alexander Vanko stated that an airstrike had hit a Frente Polisario convoy of vehicles that was transporting armaments. The Special Representative did not say this. MINURSO was able to visit the site of the alleged attack on the 13th of April and found 3 vehicles, 2 trucks and 1 light vehicle, that appeared to have been hit by air-delivered munitions. MINURSO could not independently confirm if there were casualties in the incident. This information was duly reported to the Security Council on the 20th of April. Geir Peterson, the Special Envoy for Syria, will brief the Security Council this afternoon on the situation in that country. He'll be speaking by VTC from Geneva. Joyce Msuya, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, is also scheduled to brief on the humanitarian situation in Syria. From Comoros, our UN team, led by Resident Coordinator Francois Batelengaya, supported the delivery of the first batch of over 108,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines donated by the government of the United States through COVAX. This shipment will help authorities fully vaccinate more than 54,000 people between the ages of 12 and 17. Ahead of this arrival, UNICEF and the World Bank provided health authorities with ultra-cold chain freezers for the safe storage of vaccines. The UN is also working on risk communication and community engagement aimed at parents and teenagers. More than 300,000 people in the country are fully vaccinated. That's 37% of the population. The country is now aiming to reach 60% through this new vaccination effort, which is focusing on adolescents. The UN Environment Programme today released a report which says that sand must be recognized as a strategic resource, and its extraction and use need to be rethought. UNEP said that sand is the world's second most exploited resource, with 50 billion tons of sand and gravel being used each year. The report warns that extracting sand from rivers and coastal or marine ecosystems can lead to erosion, salination of aquifers, loss of protection against storm surges, and impacts on biodiversity. This poses a threat to livelihoods through water supply, food production, fisheries, or to the tourism industry. The report calls on governments, industries, and consumers to price sand in a way that recognizes its true social and environmental value, and for the development of an international standard on how sand is extracted from the marine environment. More information on the report is online. And I just want to flag that today is International Chernobyl Disaster Remembrance Day, and today is also World Intellectual Property Day. This year's theme focuses on intellectual property and youth innovating for a better future. Our colleagues of the UN Outreach Program on the Holocaust want to invite you to a book signing and discussion with Menachem Z. Rosensaft, author of Poems Born in Bergen-Belsen. He will be at the UN Bookshop tomorrow at 1 p.m. Menachem Rosensaft was born in 1948 in a camp for displaced people established near the Nazi concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen in Germany. He's the founding chairman of the International Network of Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors and serves as the General Counsel and Associate Executive Vice President of the World Jewish Congress. Limited seating will be available at the UN Bookshop, and the event will be live-streamed on the Facebook page of United Nations Publications. And last, I'd like to thank our friends in London who have paid their regular budget dues in full. Yes, we thank them very much indeed, and the UK's contribution takes us to an even 88 member states that are fully paid up. And that is it for me. Any questions before we go to our guest? Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Farhan, and apologies for being a minute or two late. On the Secretary General's meetings, has the meeting with President Putin concluded? And microphone, please.
Oh yeah, please use the microphone. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
Thanks.
Apologies. Has the meeting with President Putin concluded, and has there been any action on what the Secretary General would like to see happen in Mariupol?
Well, you've seen from his press encounter what the Secretary General says is the plan. He is discussing it further. The meeting with President Putin was wrapping up just as I was coming into this room. It should have ended by now. It seems to have lasted for about an hour or so. But of course, the point will be to take this further, both with our Russian interlocutors and of course with Ukraine in the coming days.
Can we get a readout on the outcome of the meeting with President Putin, which, even though we all know some of us know Foreign Minister Lavrov, obviously that was an important launch, but the meeting with President Putin was the most important meeting.
Yeah. Oh, and before I forget, I have to add one more thing. At 1:30 p.m., there will be a hybrid briefing here on the forthcoming 55th session of the UN Commission on Population and Development. Speakers will include Ambassador Enrique Manalo, the permanent representative of the Philippines to the United Nations, and chair of the 55th session of the Commission on Population and Development. Now, getting back to your question, we'll see what further details we can get from this meeting. Some portion of the meeting with President Putin was tete-a-tete, so I don't believe we'll be sharing much necessarily on that part. But I'll see whether later in the day there's any further information to provide. The general points that the Secretary General was conveying to his interlocutors in Russia today are the ones he made in that fairly extensive briefing. And we're also, by the way, trying to provide you a transcript of the Q&A from that session, which we'll put out once that is done.
I'll come back with another
James
question.
and then Maggie.
Yeah, just more on what was decided today. So that's, I mean, the Secretary General laid out the UN's position pretty clearly, pretty strongly. I get that. But in terms of the new things, a humanitarian contact group and a specific effort with the ICRC on Mariupol with the two sides. Do we have to wait for Thursday's, given the urgency of the Mariupol meeting, do we have to wait for the meeting with President Zelensky for that Mariupol initiative to start? Or are UN officials, because I know you've got lots of people in Ukraine, are they already trying to join that up?
We'll start the work on the ground as soon as we can. It is important to get this moving as quickly as we can. So that is what we will proceed to do.
And how can you give us any more on the next steps on that Mariupol initiative? Are the UN going to arrange convoys?
At this point, no. At this point, the idea is to work out the relevant arrangements with the sides. We'll have to see whether the forces on both sides are willing to coordinate with us on these two proposals, but we are taking them forward now, and we'll see where we can go with that.
Is the idea that the operation to try and get these people out might happen while the Secretary General's in Ukraine on Thursday?
It's a little bit too soon to tell. Right now, what we're trying to, like I said, to work with the parties. It will depend on the sort of cooperation we get on specific arrangements. Maggie and then Pam.
So I didn't catch the entire press conference this morning with the SG and Lavrov, but I didn't hear any particular acceptance from the Russian side of the SG's proposal. Was it clearly accepted?
That's really a question for the Russians rather than for us. These are things that we are presenting. We're certainly trying to do what we can to get them accepted by the parties. We'll have to see how it is received by each of the sides. As I said at the start of this meeting, the Secretary General was meeting it seems like roughly about an hour or so with President Putin. That meeting is wrapping up right now, and I'll have to see whether there's anything further that can be shared once that's done.
And then on that meeting, can you just give us a little idea? You said some of it is tete-a-tete. So is the other part of it with his aides, SG's aides and Putin's aides, and who went with the SG besides, I assume, Rosemary DiCarlo? Who else? Who's there from the UN side?
Part of it was just the Secretary General being involved, and then on the other side, on our side, for the other portion was the Secretary General and his chef de cabinet. Yes, Pam.
Thank you, Farhan. One follow-up on Edie's question. Is there any expectation that there will be a press availability by the President Putin?
No.
No. And the feed that came out of the Kremlin was only in Russian. There was some of the Secretary General going in. If there's any way to get that from the UN translated or...
Well, certainly, we have, and we've been sharing on clips of the Secretary General's
yes.
remarks, which were in English. I don't know whether we'll be able to provide Foreign Minister Lavrov's remarks under translation.
No, I mean going into the meeting with President Putin.
No, I don't believe we have access to that particular feed.
All right. And is it possible to get the Secretary General on some kind of a press conference Zoom with all of us between Moscow and Kyiv?
Well, I think that's certainly something I can share with Stefan, who's traveling with him.
Yeah, and you also said.
But I think it's much more likely that he would be able to speak after all of his visits are completed.
Okay, and where's the stop? You said you might be able to explain between Moscow and Kyiv if it's Moldova or Poland.
No, he will be going tonight to Poland, to Rzeszów, which is RZESZOW, and from there he will go onwards to Ukraine tomorrow.
Okay.
And is that it for questions? Okay. All right. There was this bizarre lull in the room, and I did not expect that. Okay, Alan.
Thank you, Farhan. Did you get any updates regarding the situation in Transnistria, please?
We're checking. Of course, we are concerned about the overall situation in the region, and we want to make sure that everything is done to lower tensions throughout. This is one of the points that the Secretary General, in fact, made in his press remarks today. But there's nothing specific to say about the situation in Transnistria right now. We know that there has been tensions, and we want all of the involved governments to do what they can to keep the sort of tensions that have occurred in Ukraine from expanding outwards. Dulcie, and then we'll go back to another round.
Yeah, if you could just clarify again. So he had a meeting with Putin for about an hour. You think it's just about wrapping up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. As I was coming in here, it was to be ending.
Okay.
It may still be going on, but I have no idea.
And that's in Moscow?
That is, indeed.
Okay, and then you said it was partly held one-on-one.
Yes, part of it was one-on-one.
And partly with Guterres?
Partly with Courtney Rattray, who was the chef de cabinet.
And who was on Putin's side?
You'd have to ask the Russians.
Okay, so then you said he's flying to Poland tonight.
Yes, to
Okay.
Rzeszów.
To where?
Rzeszów.
Okay, and with the UN entourage he went to Moscow with?
Yeah, he and his team are traveling to Poland, and from there they will travel onwards.
And why did he pick
Ukraine.
this particular town in Poland?
It's logistics. The whole point is he is trying to visit both Russia and Ukraine in the easiest possible way. Yes, and then for round two, then Edie and James again. I'll first.
Okay, thank you, Farhan. First on Transnistria, does the UN have a presence there, and if so, what is it? And on a completely different subject, Kim Jong-un said today that he's vowing to expand North Korea's nuclear capabilities. Does the Secretary General have any comment on that?
Well, we have always implored the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to work with the parties and to return to talks on the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And we again encourage them to do so and to avoid any unhelpful rhetoric. Regarding Transnistria, I believe we do have a UN country team in Moldova, and so that is our basic source of information on the situation there.
One more on the SG in Moscow. He said today that he regretted that the UN wasn't part of the Minsk process, and then beyond that, the Normandy format, I guess. That's the first time we've heard the UN say that it regrets that it wasn't part of that. Why didn't he sort of raise his voice and try and insert the UN? I mean, I know he wasn't Secretary General in 2014, Ban Ki-moon was, but he's not really pushed himself into Ukraine diplomacy until this time. It sort of sounds like he was sort of sitting in the corner regretting that no one was talking to him about it.
No, he's been very active throughout, and I don't think he's been in the corner. He's been speaking out about this since prior to the start of the conflict, and you've heard what he's had to say. And he's talked with a number of leaders around the world from day one. The Minsk group, however, was one of which the UN was not asked to be part of. And I think part of what he's suggesting is that it would have been helpful had we had our role in there. That's not what the parties in the Minsk group had sought at the time, but looking with the benefit of hindsight, it certainly would have been helpful had we been there.
Okay, I want to ask you about something different now. Elon Musk is the new owner of Twitter. The UN, so on COVID-19, for example, you have this verified campaign to make sure there's no disinformation and whatever. The new owner of Twitter is someone who has been involved in all sorts of denial of COVID-19. He's tanked his own Tesla share price on Twitter. He's called a cave guy the pedo guy. Again, on COVID-19, he compared the Canadian Prime Minister to Hitler. This is a suitable man to be owning what's not just a media company. It's a social media platform, and one could say a pretty vital part of the current now news ecosystem.
Well, I don't comment one way or another on the suitability of business deals. That's not my place to opine on. We are very clear about the realities of COVID-19. That is what the Verified Initiative is about, and we will continue to do what we can to correct any disinformation from any quarter about COVID-19 and the best means of tackling the pandemic.
Let me ask it another way then. Is the UN happy that such an important part of the news architecture now is owned just by one man?
I think that's part of a larger question about the control of different media empires, and that's a larger topic than having to do with just Elon Musk. It has to do with making sure that there's many alternate sources of information in the media, so that people can choose from a variety of perspectives, and we encourage the free dissemination of media and try to see what can be done to encourage that. Yes, Stefano.
Thank you, Farhan. In the hours where the Secretary General is in Moscow, I think the exchange of words between Russians and United States and UK escalated. There is Lavrov that say that the risk of a nuclear war, of World War III, is increasing. The British say that is bombing Russia with weapons provided by the NATO ally is legitimate, and so the Russian says that also bombing a NATO country at this point will be. What is the I mean, I know that the the meeting with Putin was just in these hours, but what was the reaction of the Secretary General in Moscow when he was there, when he heard these phrases of Third World War and nuclear exchange?
Well, I'd again just refer you to what the Secretary General has been saying and to his press remarks today, which are fairly clear in what his concerns are about this. But overall, the basic point is we want to see a de-escalation. We want to see a military de-escalation, but we also want to see a de-escalation in rhetoric. We want to make sure that no actions are taken that raise tensions in an already extremely tense atmosphere. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Farhan. You read out the statement from resident coordinator in Pakistan, UN resident coordinator in Pakistan, on the terrorist attack in Karachi, but do you have a reaction from the Secretary General?
Yes, I do. I can tell you the Secretary General strongly condemns the attack in Karachi today and the killing of 5 civilians. The Secretary General expresses his condolences to the families and wishes those injured a quick recovery. And there's a question from Nikos.
Hi, Farhan. Thank you so much. My question is regarding the Secretary General visit to Turkey. Yesterday, the Secretary General visited Turkey, an invader to Cyprus since 1974 with 200 refugees, in order to discuss about another invader, Russia. Did the Secretary General discuss this to bring it to President Erdogan's attention during their meeting? Because here we're talking about 2 invaders, and he visited an invader yesterday. How would you respond to that?
Cyprus
and the invasion there?
We provided a detailed readout of the Secretary General's meeting with President Erdogan, and I would just refer you to the details of that readout. Regarding our position on Cyprus,
there's nothing there. That's why I'm asking.
Regarding our position on Cyprus, that's well known, and as you know, we continue to work with the parties trying to have a resolution of the situation in Cyprus. That is as much as I would have to say on that.
Can you please repeat, because there was some disruption, please?
What?
Could you repeat it, because there was some problem with the noise. Could you kindly repeat your answer?
I just said the details of the meeting were contained in the readout, and our position on Cyprus is clear, and we continue to work with the parties for a resolution of the situation on Cyprus. And after that, Chris from CBC.
This informal meeting happening tomorrow with the human rights chief and lawyer Amal Clooney, a briefing that's happening tomorrow?
I'm not aware of a briefing by the human rights chief. What? Oh, under the ARIA formula. Yeah, ARIA formula meetings are not official Security Council meetings. Essentially, those are meetings in which the members of the Security Council are invited by one of the member states. We don't participate in those meetings and don't tend to comment on them.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Thanks. And by the way, Alan, regarding your question on Transnistria, and I think Edie also asked, I can just say also, the Secretary General is following with concern reports of new security incidents in the Transnistrian region of Moldova and urges all concerned to refrain from any statements or actions that could escalate tensions. The United Nations continues to fully support the OSCE-led Transnistrian settlement process in the 5+2 format, based on the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Moldova. And we'll take one final question from Oscar and then go to our guest. Oscar, are you still there?
Yes, thank you, Farhan. Yes, Farhan, my question is on these meetings that Secretary General is already having with President Vladimir Putin and the Secretary of State of Russia. He has in his agenda to talk about as well the situation of the civilian that has been displaced against the will, and what is the situation with them, what's going on, and about numbers how many children, women, elder people? What's the situation with that? Do those civilians? If is that in discuss with President Putin or either Secretary of State of Russia?
We've been discussing throughout, both at the Secretary General's levels and indeed at all levels, our concerns about the situations of civilians trapped in the fighting, and we're continuing to take that forward. All right, and with that, let us go to our guest.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.